Are you frustrated with yourself because you're not achieving the goals that you had set out to achieve or reach that height, that level of success that you imagined for yourself? How do we obtain the things that we desire when they feel so unattainable? Well, in today's video, we'll be going over why it's so critically important to get to know who you are, get to know yourself. You should know yourself better than anyone else, because once we know ourselves, then we can start embarking on achieving the goals and the height and the level of success that we imagine for ourselves to want to achieve. We can start achieving what we desire, accomplish those goals, reach that height and level of success that we imagine. We can do it all, but we need to first get to know ourselves. We'll be going over the first 3 chapters of Psycho-Cybernetics by Maxwell Maltz, and I hand-selected one key quote that stood out to me the most in each chapter. So let's start off with chapter 1. Here we go. You must know yourself, both your strengths and your weaknesses, and be honest with yourself concerning both. Understanding the psychology of self can mean the difference between success and failure, love and hate, bitterness and happiness. Whether we realize it or not, each of us carry with us a mental blueprint or picture of ourselves. This self-image is our own ideas of who we are. The thing is most of these beliefs about ourselves have unconsciously formed from past experiences, our successes and failures, our humiliations, our triumphs, and the way other people have reacted to us, especially in childhood. From all of these, we mentally construct our self-image. Once an idea or a belief about ourselves gets rooted into that image, it becomes true. We don't question its validity. We just go on acting as if it is true. And so it's important to know that all your actions, feelings, and behaviors, even your abilities, are always consistent with this self-image. So you will always act like the sort of person that you perceive yourself to be. For example, the person who perceives to be a failure type person will always find some way to fail. Or the person who perceives themselves to be a victim will always find a way to suffer. The good news is that the self-image can change. You're never too young or too old to change your self-image and start living a brand new life. And it's not just a matter of thinking more positively. It's getting to the root of who you are, unearthing all of that, stripping away the things that don't serve you and planting the things that do serve you to move forward. It's so critically important to pay attention to the vocabulary, the words that you're saying to yourself. For example, if you're saying, well, I just don't have a mathematical mind, or if you're saying, I just naturally am a poor speller, then that means you're identifying yourself as such because you failed that math test, or you failed that spelling test. The problem with those phrases, those identifications for yourself, is that you're identifying yourself as someone who is consistently terrible at math, or who is consistently terrible at spelling, when maybe you've only failed one math test. Right there in that moment, you failed that test, and you can say, yes, I failed that test. And so for the next test, I will make sure to do something different in hopes of producing better new results. And so you're not identifying as someone who's terrible at math. You're identifying yourself as someone who, okay, I see evidence right here that I failed this test. I know what I did or did not do to get this result. And so now let's do something different, something better study habits or whatever it may be, to then produce better results for that next math test or that next spelling test. And so, for example, it's far better to identify yourself as a learner, because then you can say, oh, I'm a learner. I failed this test. I'm going to learn from this failure, do something different, do something better, level up, become better, and then see what new result I can get from the next time I take this test, from the next time I'm tested in life or with this school exam or whatever it may be. So it all boils down to mindset. Mindset is everything. To really live a satisfying life, you must first have a very satisfying self-image of yourself. A self-image that you can live with. You must find yourself acceptable to you. You must have a self that you can trust and believe in. You must have a self that you're not ashamed to be, and one that you can feel free to express creatively, rather than hide and cover up. You must know yourself, all your strengths, all your weaknesses, and get vulnerable with yourself, and be honest with yourself concerning both of those, all of those, all the good and all the bad. Because when the self-image is intact and secure, you feel good. When your self-image is adequate and is one that you can be proud of, then you're bursting with confidence. Our self-image prescribes the limits for the accomplishment of any particular goal. It prescribes the area of the possible. All it takes is one positive experience to begin changing the course of your entire life. Remember this, because nothing is insignificant. Each little thing that happens in your life every single day is significant. Those small victories, those small wins throughout a day stack up and compound over time to produce something incredibly significant. So they are significant. All those little things are significant because they stack and stack and stack and become something grandiose. Now let's get into chapter 2. Here's the quote that stood out to me the most. In much the same way, when we set out to find a new idea or the answer to a problem, we must assume that the answer exists already somewhere and set out to find it. To live from an animal's perspective is just to survive. But to live as a human is not just us surviving, but thriving as well. We're able to communicate with one another. So finding those passions, those things that energize us, go after those things, share those things with others. We're meant for more than just survival. And we've all been around animals long enough to know that they all have instincts that guide them, right? Animals have a survival instinct, a success instinct, if you want to call it that. A way to be successful at survival. And of course, we as humans have that as well. The difference is that animals can't select goals, select passions, but we can. With our imagination, we can formulate a whole list of goals. So inside all of us, there is a natural guidance system to automatically steer you in the right direction to accomplish the goals that you have set out to achieve. We can steer our way to a goal, a target, an answer. We can create whatever level of success we want to create for ourselves. But again, it starts with getting your self-image right. And when it comes to accomplishing these goals, achieving the height of success that we want to achieve, we have to get comfortable with mistakes, with failures. The torpedo, for example, accomplishes its goal, reaches its target by going forward, making an error, correcting itself, 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 until finally, boom, it hits its target, right? That's what a torpedo naturally does. So on the pursuit toward any path, you're going to experience errors, failures, mistakes. It's natural. And so how resilient are you going to be? How quickly are you going to pick yourself back up and head toward that path, that goal, that target, that height of success that you're imagining yourself to be at? Anytime you've learned anything new, you've received feedback data. When you're an infant and learning how to pick something up, your brain had to figure out in this environment, in this world, how to pick that up. When you learn how to ride a bike, figure out how to stay up proper on two wheels. So especially in the beginning when you're learning anything new, there's a ton of feedback data that you have to filter through, those errors, those mistakes, those failures, constantly correcting yourself until finally you've done it enough times to where you feel that you've mastered that very thing. So there's going to be less and less errors, less and less mistakes, less and less failures. When it comes to solving problems, you've got to readily assume that the answer is there somewhere. This is why it's important to not give up too early when you're learning something new, or even when you're trying to solve a problem. If you really mean business, have that intense desire, and begin to think intensely about all angles of the problem, then you can begin to grope your way to the answer to that problem, much the same way that the torpedo gropes its way toward the target. It's important not to give up too early on solving a problem. The answer exists out there somewhere. You can figure it out as long as you focus. Give it a little bit of time. Look at all the angles. For most people who are trying to solve a problem, they look at one angle, don't give it much time. They say, oh, I can't figure this out, and then they give up. Don't be that person. Stick it out long enough in solving that problem, finding that answer, to where you finally have the answer, and you can celebrate that victory. Because then you can carry that win into another problem. You can look back and be like, I solved that problem. I can solve this problem. And it carries on, compounds over time to where then you identify yourself as someone who is a problem solver. Let's get into chapter 3. Here's the quote that stood out to me the most. You act and feel not according to what things are really like, but according to the image your mind holds of what they are like. Imagination plays a far more important role in our lives than most of us realize. For example, we can over-embellish some of the features on our face, kind of hide ourselves from people because we think it's standing out too much. But in fact, in other people's eyes, they don't notice anything, not in what you're imagining. Or you could be the person who thinks that everyone who's talking around you is talking about you or laughing at you, when that's not the case at all. Because each and every one of us are most concerned about ourselves and thinking about ourselves and how we're perceived to other people. So the percentage chance that somebody else is talking about you or laughing at you in your environment is incredibly low. But if you're letting your imagination run wild with these ideas, you're just self-sabotaging yourself. These ideas are just holding you back from your potential. Your imagination can cause such havoc with your self-image that you can easily lose sight of the truth. In fact, your imagination alone can be the cause of all your misery, because imagination sets the goal, sets the picture, sets the image. We act or fail to act not because of will, but because of our imagination. A person always acts and feels and performs in accordance with what he imagines to be true about himself and his environment. This is a basic fundamental law. Your nervous system absolutely cannot tell the difference between an imagined experience and a real experience. Your nervous system reacts appropriately to what you think or imagine to be true. You act and feel not according to what things are really like in your environment, but according to the image your mind holds about those things, that environment. You have certain mental images of yourself, of the world, and the people around you, and you behave as though these images were truth, reality, rather than the things they truly represent. So if our ideas and mental images concerning ourselves and the world are distorted or unrealistic, then our reaction to our environment will likewise be inappropriate. And so if our idea of ourselves can be distorted, then we can begin to work on making it crystal clear, right? We can begin to imagine ourselves successful and achieving that height of success that we want to achieve. Mental pictures offer us the opportunity to practice new traits and attitudes. And as we've all heard before, mental practice makes perfect. So we can practice in our imagination just as much as we can practice in our environment. In sales, role-playing is absolutely critical. Role-playing is simply imagining yourself in various sales situations, then solving those problems in your mind until you know exactly what to say and what to do whenever the situation pops up in your environment in real life. The same goes for interviewing. You can easily role-play when it comes to interviewing, mentally prepare for that interview you're about to go into, know exactly what to say and what to do, be prepared for every possible question that could be thrown at you. And by being prepared for these type of situations, role-playing just naturally builds confidence in you. Because once you're in those situations in real life, you can look at it like, oh, I've been through this before. I know exactly what to say. I know exactly what to do. You must have a clear mental picture of the correct thing before you can do it successfully. The correct way to handle objections, the correct way to answer questions to an interview. And so much like a goal, you must first clearly see a thing in your mind before you can do it, before you can achieve it. This applies to leveling yourself up. If you want to put yourself in a whole new role that you've never been before, you have to imagine yourself as the person you need to become to be successful in that role. First, know and identify the characteristics of a person who is successful in that particular role. Then go to work and imagining yourself as that person, carrying out the responsibilities, the tasks of that particular role, being successful, being recognized in that role, and acting as if until you are in that new role. So our aim is to bring our mental images of ourselves more in line with the objects represented by our goals. What this means is stripping away everything that is not serving you toward your goals, toward your vision of yourself, and replacing those things that are no longer serving you with things that will start to serve you to help you reach that destination, to accomplish that goal, to achieve that height of success that you're looking for. I hope this has been helpful. It's been a lot of fun. I'll be covering other future chapters of Psycho-Cybernetics by Maxwell Maltz in other future videos, so make sure to look out for those as those are released, and I'll see you in the next video.